Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today we are continuing our look at the ThinkPad X1 Fold 16 Gen 1. And now if you've missed my original video of unboxing and my initial reaction to this, then make sure that you're checking that out over here. But today we are here to dive into some more details, the specifications of this device, my user experience, the design of it. There's a lot to talk about here, so strap in and let's get started. So I know that many of you are going to be asking about the specifications of this device, so let's just go right into it. Your display is a 16-inch 4x3 OLED, which is a 600 nit Dolby Vision panel, and it has anti-smudge tech to hopefully keep those fingerprints down, but as you can tell from studio lights, it is incredibly high gloss. Your screen dimension is a 16 by 912 inch when folded, and the whole display is 2560 pixels by 2024 pixels. The specifications in terms of the CPU on this thing is a 12th generation i7 1260U, and that is vPro enabled. We have 32 gigabytes of low-power DDR5 RAM and 1 terabyte of PCIe Gen 4 storage. Your GPU is an integrated Intel Iris Xe graphics, which is actually capable of doing some decent gaming at medium settings. One of the experiences I actually had recently was doing a little bit of gaming on the couch, and it was really cool to see how this worked in every orientation pretty much instantly. And it was just a really laid-back experience because I could use the touch display, the pen, or the keyboard to interact with the game I was playing. Bluetooth 5.2 and Wi-Fi 6E means that you're fully equipped for any kind of modern connectivity. And on the matter of connectivity, you have 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports and then 1 USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 port and a nano SIM tray. All of this is being driven by a 48 watt-hour battery with a 16 watt-hour optional battery that is rapid charge tech enabled. Some further features include the 4 microphones that are located on the device. There are 3 speakers, one on either side of the right-hand side of the display, or the bottom half, and then another speaker is on the top left-hand edge when the laptop is deployed. And those speakers are very loud. Generally, I am leaving it at about 30%, and that is loud enough for me. Now, the overall starting weight of the tablet portion, because this is an important conversation to have, is about 1.26 kilograms, with the whole thing together being closer to 1.89 kilograms. Now, depending on the specs, like of the additional battery, that's obviously going to increase in weight, but you're going to be sitting at around probably the maximum 2 kilograms for this device, which is going to be weightier than some of the laptops that some of you might be used to carrying. However, when you're looking at this as a system, not just a laptop, that is a much easier pill, in my opinion, to swallow. Now, I mentioned this when I took it out of the box, but the design we really need to talk about because they outdid themselves. This cover, this material, I would actually enjoy seeing on more devices. It's a recycled PET woven performance fabric cover, and it just feels fantastic. And this has been out in the middle of nowhere, and it has worn very, very well. It's been everywhere from desks to conference rooms to sound booths to the middle of the woods, and it has performed admirably, keeping this thing safe and looking rather sharp, I think. And if you're interested, there's also recyclable materials used in the speaker enclosure, battery, and the adapter. So they are trying to reuse materials where it makes sense. Obviously, recycled components everywhere is not something that we're quite there on yet. We got to talk user experience because this thing, of course, is entering an era and a market that is primarily dominated by a laptop. And this, of course, can be pressed into laptop service by simply opening the device using the on-screen keyboard or just whipping out the TrackPoint enabled keyboard with those haptic feedback buttons. Now, the nice part, of course, is that you can use this just as a standard Bluetooth keyboard in any configuration you like. And if you don't even want to use this and use something else, you have that option as well. The pen attaching to the side, again, is good. In a perfect world, it would be nice in a future version to see the pen stored because it's the only part that kind of detaches when it's going in and out of bags. Now, this thing is powerful. It is running an i7 U series processor, not a G7 or some ultra lightweight CPU. And that means that you are going to be able to push this thing relatively well, certainly much more than the first generation device that had a very anemic processor that on paper definitely was a computer, but it didn't really hold up. This can game, this can do moderate to heavier processes if you have the time, and it doesn't get super toasty. When I was gaming with it, I definitely felt some warmth on one of the covers where the CPU is stored, but overall it didn't detract from the overall experience. I do have to say that the haptic trackpad, it's a surprise. It's something that I was really nervous about, not having the dedicated buttons for the track point. However, I have gotten used to it. The pad does feel very wide to me, and maybe that's just because it's wider than it is long, and I'm still getting used to that. But overall, it functions as you would expect. The haptic feedback clicks are customizable. If you do want those track point buttons, make sure you're going into the menu for the track point and enabling them, because they're not enabled by default. And I can understand maybe why that's done, but some documentation on how to enable it would also be appreciated. The track point has the double tap menu, so double tapping on the track point itself will open up the track point menu, which has some limited customization. It would be nice to see that have a bit more customization, like Lenovo Voice that's included with this, where you can speak commands to it and it will do certain actions or run certain macros. It would be nice to see that level of customization in the track point menu as well. Speaking of the keyboard, I have found in my experience that there's kind of a best way to store this, if you will. And let me try and explain that as best that I can. So what I mean by that is that obviously when the keyboard's not detected via the magnets, it's full screen. And when you put the keyboard on, it shuts off that bottom half. Everything is working as intended. Now, when you go to store this underneath, you're obviously going to take the stand, latch it in to where it belongs on the keyboard, and you're going to fold this over. Now, if you store it underneath the device like so, you'll note that the bottom half has shut off even though it has been docked, and that's because the magnets underneath are still being detected by the screen. The best way that I have found to get around that is to simply reverse the keyboard, and it does exactly what you'd expect. So you want to have the folded edge of the fabric facing you, so that way it doesn't happen. So just a little bit of a user tip there is if you do that, then you can still use the touch keyboard without having to remove all of the bits that are being magnetically stored underneath. One other thing I will mention is because the keyboard charges with USB Type-C and all of the other ports are USB Type-C, believe it or not, I have accidentally plugged in the keyboard and charged the keyboard when I thought I had plugged in the actual device, the laptop itself. Because I have a 75% chance of getting it right without thinking about it, but there is a 25% chance that I might accidentally plug that in. And you know what? That's just a problem that you need to overcome by using this device, getting used to it, double checking that, because I don't want them to try and fix that another way, because I think doing that will either add a proprietary port, which we don't want, or make it more difficult to charge. Now, overall, is this a durable machine? Absolutely. I thought that this would be a bit of a glass cannon, if you will, but this thing feels and looks every much a ThinkPad. Like, this thing is rock solid. I am not afraid of breaking this, and that obviously has a lot to do with it passing that military standard 810H testing. But I've also taken this thing out into the cold, into the winter, and it has done perfectly fine. It's like, yeah, whatever. I have not babied this. It's gone everywhere my regular laptop would go, and it has served perfectly fine. I have no concerns about the durability of the screen at this point, the durability of the hinge, the actual case itself. Everything feels as solid as you would expect it to be. And that does raise a question on how it looks to other people. So obviously other people have seen my use of this device. I would say about 95% of them, unless they see me set it up, just dismiss it as a laptop, unless I have it set up in a very specific configuration. But more often than not, when I'm in a meeting, I only want to take up a certain footprint, and this allows me to do that. However, if I need a larger footprint, or if I need to showcase something to somebody, it's a simple matter of just opening up that screen, pulling the keyboard off, and then I can literally just hand them the computer and be like, here, take a look at it, and they could hold it like a book. Like, that is just absolutely cool, how many different ways that you can use this thing flawlessly. That was the other part, is the software. Is the transition from computer to tablet and back to tablet, or whatever form factor you intend to use this, as smooth as it needs to be a actual production usable device for whoever wants to buy one of these things? And the answer is yes. It does do all the things that you would expect a laptop to do, a tablet to do, and the transition between them is probably the easiest and most effortless experience I have ever encountered. And keep in mind, this is coming from a person that's used a whole lot of different form factor machines, both, just casually on the channel, but also in my practice. And this, to me, when it came out, was the most exciting, and it has lived up to those expectations. And in terms of battery life, I'm happy to report that the 2 batteries that were included in this model that was sent to me have done very, very well. They have never not lasted the day, and that is through some light to medium use. Now, just like any mobile device, if you are doing heavy processes that are going to tax the battery, drain, really ramp up that CPU, you're obviously going to leach battery life. So those maximums that they put out there are always theoretical. And obviously, if you want to kill this thing as fast as possible, you're going to be able to do that too. So it all has to do with expectations. This should, if you have the 2 batteries, for light to medium use, last you the day. No problem. And I mean the work day. So we're talking 8 to 10 hours. If you are using this thing heavily for gaming, so when I was doing my testing, I was able in about 2 hours to cut down that battery by about 50%. So 4 to 5 hours if I'm gaming with it. And you know what? That is perfectly fine by me. This is not a gaming machine. I am pushing it into service into an area where it is not going to have expertise. And I don't imagine a lot of you are going to be picking up an X1 Fold to game on it. So there is that too. Making sure that your use case fits the system that you're buying. So overall, my impressions after 2 weeks of this thing are exceptionally positive. Like, I knew that I was going to be excited about this, but I didn't think it was going to be everything that it is, and that is really exciting for me to report. I hope that the remaining time that I have left to look at this device, I'll be able to report more to you before ultimately I believe this model has to be sent back. So I hope you've enjoyed the content, and that if you do have any questions, you're leaving them in the comment section down below. So in the next update that I can give you, I might be able to address some of the concerns or questions that you might have there. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to do that if the timing works out. I want to again thank Lenovo for giving me the opportunity through the Lenovo Insiders program to take a look at this device so early. You're seeing this video a little bit later. To have this opportunity is just so darn exciting, and I've had the opportunity to give some feedback on some of the software, hardware interactivity that I'm hoping that they're going to act on, and I can report the positive results of that in the future as well. So, thank you so much. If you want to keep up to date on what I'm up to, make sure you're doing all of those YouTube things that obviously help the channel out immensely. And once again, I look forward to sharing with you next time my report. See you soon.